Coraline, Chapter 2. The next day, it had stopped raining, but a thick white fog had lowered over the house. I'm going for a walk, said Coraline. Don't go too far, said her mother, and dressed up warmly. Coraline put on her blue coat with a hood, her red scarf, and her yellow Wellington boots. She went out. Miss Pink was walking her dogs. Hello, Caroline, said Miss Pink. Rotten weather. Yes, said Coraline. I played portier once, said Miss Pink. Miss Fogg? Miss Forcible talks about her Ophelia. But it was my portier they kept see when we trod the boards. Spink was bundled up in pullovers and cardigans, so she seemed more small and circular than ever. She looked like a large fluffy egg. She wore thick glasses. They made her eyes seem huge. Did you send flowers to my dressing room? They did, she said. Who did? Asked Coraline. Miss Pink looked around cautiously, looking first over one shoulder and then over the other, peering into the mist, as though someone might be listening. Men, she whispered. Then she tugged the dog's heel and waddled off back towards the house. Coraline continued her walk. She was 3/4 of the way around the house when she saw Miss Forcible standing at the door to the flat she shared with Miss Pink. Have you seen Miss Pink, Caroline? Caroline told her that she had, and Miss Pink was out walking the dogs. I do hope she doesn't get lost. I'll bring on her shigless. If she does, you'll see, said Miss Forcible. You'd have to be an explorer to find your way around in this fog. I am an explorer, said Coraline. Of course you are, lovely, said Miss Forcible. Don't get lost now. Coraline continued walking through the garden in the grey mist. She always kept in sight of the house. After about 10 minutes of walking, she found herself back where she had started. The hair over her eyes was limp and wet, and her face felt damp. Ahoy, Caroline, called the crazy old man upstairs. Oh, hello, said Coraline. She could hardly see the old man through the mist. He walked down the steps on the outside of the door that led up past Coraline's front door to the door of his flat. He walked down very slowly. Coraline waited at the bottom of the steps. Mice do not like the mist, he told her. Makes their whiskers droop. I don't like the mist either, admitted Coraline. The old man leaned down so close that the bottom of his mustache tickled Coraline's ear. The mice have a message for you, he whispered. Coraline didn't know what to say. The message is this. Don't go to the door. He paused. Does that mean anything to you? No, said Coraline. The old man shrugged. They're funny, the mice. They get things wrong. They got your name wrong, you know. They kept saying Coraline, not Caroline. Not Caroline at all. He picked up a milk bottle from the bottom step, started back up to his attic flat. Coraline went indoors. Her mother was working in her study. Caroline's mother smelled of flowers. What shall I do? Said Coraline. When do you go back to school? asked her mother. Next week, said Caroline. Hmm, said her mother. I suppose I shall have to get you new school clothes. Remind me, dear, or else I'll forget. And she went back to typing things on the computer screen. What shall I do? Repeated computer. Repeated Caroline. Draw something. Her mother passed her a sheet of paper and a ballpoint pen. Caroline tried drawing the mist. After 10 minutes of drawing, she still had a white sheet of paper with MIST written in it on one corner in slightly wiggly letters. She grunted and passed it to her mother. Very modern, dear, said Caroline's mother. Caroline crept into the drawing room and tried to open the old door in the corner. It was locked once more. She supposed her mother must have locked it again. She shrugged. Caroline went to see her father. He had his back to the door as he typed. Go away, he said cheerfully as she walked in. I'm bored, she said. Learn how to tap dance, he suggested without turning around. Caroline shook her head. Why don't you play with me? She asked. Busy. Working, he added. He still hadn't turned around to look at her. Why don't you go and bother Miss Fink and Miss Forcible? Caroline put her coat and pulled up her hood and went to her house. She went down the steps. She rang the door of Miss Pink and Miss Forcible's flat. Caroline could hear the frenzied woofing of Scotty dogs as they ran down the hall. After a while, Miss Pink opened the door. Oh, it's you, Caroline, she said. Argus Hamish. Bruce now. Down, lovies. It's only Caroline. Come in, dear. Would you like a cup of tea? The flat smelled of furniture, polish, and dogs. Yes, please, said Caroline. Miss Pink led her into a dusty little room, which he called the parlor. On the walls were black and white photo frames of pretty women and theatre programmes in frames. Miss Forcible was sitting in one of the armchairs, knitting hard. Miss Pink poured Caroline a cup of tea in a little pink bone china cup with a saucer and gave her a dry Garibaldi biscuit to go with it. Miss Forcible looked at Miss Pink, picked up her knitting and took a deep breath. Anyway, April, as I was saying, you still have to admit there's life in the old dog yet, she said. Marian, dear, neither of us is as young as we were. Madame Arcady, replied Miss Forcible. The nurse in Romeo. Lady Bracknell, character parts. They didn't retire you from stage. Now, Mariam, we agreed, said Miss Spring. Caroline wondered if they had forgotten she was there. They weren't making much sense. She decided they were having an argument, as old and comfortable as in an armchair. The kind of argument that no one ever really wins or loses, but which can go on and on forever, if both parties are willing. She sipped her tea. I'll read the leaves if you want, said Miss Pink to Coraline. Sorry, said Coraline. The tea, dears. The tea leaves, dear. I'll read your future. Caroline passed Miss Pink her cup. Miss Pink peered short-sightedly at the black tea leaves in the bottom. She pursed her lips. You know, Caroline, she said after a while, you are in terrible danger. Miss Forcible snorted and put down her knitting. Don't be silly, April. Stop scaring the girl. Your eyes are going. Pass me that cup, child. Caroline carried the cup over to Miss Forcible. Miss Forcible looked into it carefully and shook her head and looked into it again. Oh dear, she said. You were right, April. She is in danger. See, Mariam, said Miss Pink triumphantly. My eyes are as good as they ever were. What am I in danger from? Asked Caroline. Miss Pink and Miss Forcible stared at her blankly. I didn't say, said Miss Pink. Tea leaves aren't reliable for that kind of thing. Not really. They're good for generalities, but not for specifics. What should I do then? Asked Coraline, who was slightly alarmed by this. Don't wear green in your dressing room, suggested Miss Pink. Or mention the Scottish play, added Miss Forcible. Coraline wondered why so few of the adults she had met made any sense. She sometimes wondered who they thought they were talking to. And be very, very careful, said Miss Pink as she got up from her armchair and went over to the fireplace. On the mantelpiece was a small jar, and Miss Pink took off the top of the jar and began to pull things out of it. There was a tiny china duck, a thimble, strange little brass coin, two paper clips, and a stone with a hole in it. She passed Coraline the stone with a hole in it. What's it for? Asked Coraline. The hole went all the way through the middle of the stone. She held it up to the window and looked through it. It might help, said Miss Pink. They're good for bad things sometimes. Coraline put on her coat and said goodbye to Miss Pink and Miss Forcible, and to the dogs, and went outside. The mist hung like blindness around the house. She walked slowly to the steps up to her family's flat, and then stopped and looked around. In the mist, it was a ghost world, in danger, thought Coraline. To herself. It sounded exciting. Didn't sound like a bad thing, not really. Caroline went back to her steps, her fist closed tightly around the new stone. Chapter 2 end.